Hey, everybody, welcome to June 19th, Thursday coaching call. We're going to start off with a member question, and it was regarding one of the factors in the probability calculation scale. Remember, this is just one of like 20 to 12 that you should be looking at, so it's not that important, right? None of these are important in and of themselves, only as a collective. Nevertheless, you got to understand how each of them work. So let's talk about how the different setups on the CCI that correspond with price can either confirm a trend continuation or a counter trend. I think what people get confused about this is that they don't identify what they mean with the trend and counter trend. So let's just take a zero line reject. And just for anyone watching, to remind everyone, this is a zero line reject trade, right? Okay. And here's the short side of it. Just flip it around. Now let's go take a look at a classic zero line reject. Let me just get rid of a couple of indicators here. Okay. Oh, maybe too much. Okay, so let's look at a classic zero line reject setup. I'm going to identify this is a really nice one here for the long side because the CCI didn't cross over the zero line, and or if it did, it just did it momentarily. And then the turbo had a nice overshoot. That's really what you want, right? Here's another example of it. Here's another example of it. I just, they just go with price. Now, this one is trend continuation. Okay, if we look at what that means, right? Most of them are counter trend. The CCI is trend continuation, meaning, okay, right, we were in a balance. We know the dominant trend has been up, right? Now we go up here, we get exhausted, and we have, these last 2 days very bearish, right? But that's only the short-term bias, right? The last couple of days, really, it's just neutral if you think about it. This is the whole short term here. But the intermediate term and the big picture is a balanced breakout pattern, right? So we already know the larger time frame bias is up. And then when you have this pulling back into this support area here, which is a couple day high volume node, and you have an amazing zero line reject setup, right? That's going to be the trend continuation, right? That's what you got. You got this trend continuation. Okay. Right. Then we go here, right? I just wanted to show a hook from extremes. And I don't even really know what came after that. Hopefully you didn't see there. I was just looking at this, right? So now we have even more of an extension. So we have another principle called leg count, right? That shows exhaustion. You want to sell on strength. And you have a classic, pretty solid hook from extremes. It's almost touching the 200. I mean, that's a really good one here, right? I mean, they don't always work, right? It started something and then it took off a little bit. But let's just go to, right? So a hook from extreme is counter trend. We just established that the trend was up. So this one would be counter to the uptrend. So it'd be down for a bit, right? And then we have people say, well, how far does it go down? Well, that's not what the hook from extremes does. The hooks from extremes is a setup that identifies, in this case, it would be a short setup, right? Because it's a hook from a bullish extreme. So it's a reversal setup to the trend. That's when you could really step in and short that sucker. That's a really, really, I mean, it doesn't feel right to do it, but it's the right thing to do, especially candlestick pattern is a doji candlestick at the top of a multiple trend leg count up is a reversal signal. So you have that is down or sideways down, down. You can see just bearish overall. That's bearish. You have a hook from extreme is bearish. You have leg count, multiple leg counts up is bearish, right? So you have all these things that say, we've also dog leash. We've moved too far from the mean. So that's down. You have on your daily call list, there'd be a lot of different things that are down. Now you could say time frame alignment. Yeah, a lot of things are up for sure. But we know when markets get overextended, right? They're prone to pullbacks. So that doesn't mean time frame alignment, is one thing with leg count and all the other things I said are another thing. Right? Now time frame alignment means that even though you see this, you understand that the time frames are still up. So when it gets to good support, you can go long again, which would be probably at the bottom of this balance here, right? That's when you get the first sideways action. But just, after things go up, they will probably go sideways, right? That's what this very, it looks like down, up, down, up. That's what this market is, right? That's a sideways market. Okay. And then we get this. Okay. All right. So we have horizontal support here, right? So we just looking at different things. Obviously, I would make this a lot smaller, right, to trade it, but just the idea that there's, we're at support right here. For instance, I'll just make it that small, but this would also be another support zone down here. I don't want to make it that wide, but that's one support zone, right? So we went sideways, we went up, then we went sideways, right? We know there's a pattern that we identified, that Corby identified, that we used to call the November 2023 lows that we gave the signal for in November. There's no other channel that gave it that hardcore that week. I made a whole video about it. It was on January 10th. Okay. Everyone and their mama and their dad, wishes they were more cash solvent at that time to have pumped into that. Because it wasn't like anyone could just say, oh, Bitcoin's, 75% off. I'm going to buy. Da, 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 da. Now you're in a freaking bear market for 4.5 years. How do you feel, genius? You're a dumb huddler. Shut up. Okay. We know the market's going phases. We want to time it so we don't have to have our capital tied up for a long time. That's what our Bitcoin time cycle is. We'll get into that in a minute. But here, right, we want to identify something interesting with the CCI. We went up, then we go sideways, right? We know the pattern is usually after we go up, sideways, right? There has to be probably a reversion to the mean. Let's go and take a look, right? We have a horizontal trend line break.